So now we're on to Learning Goal 2, and this is sort of taking a break from multiplying and, fractions. And we are now going to sort of review a little bit about converting decimals and fractions together.
I think this is like the third time we've talked about this, so you guys should be
Yes.
really, really good at this by now.
Should be like a little deja vu or something. So first of all, we can just think about how one way that you can convert decimals into fractions is just reading it. So for instance, it might just be ready to write down right away. So in your notebooks, you can even write this down, read it. Because if I look at this fraction here, and I could say 3 over 10, or I could say 3/10. And some of you might be thinking, oh, yeah, that's like a decimal. So it would look like that.
Ta-da!
There it is.
It's as easy as that.
Yep. We could have a bigger fraction, like 12 thousandths. Well, thinking back to what we learned about decimals and place value, that's now going to look like this then. And I think there's one more example. You could have, actually you're going to try this one. So take a moment and jot this in your notebook. Now that you've seen these two other examples, how would you write this one as a decimal? Pause and try. And now you're probably reading it as 27 hundredths, and so that should look like this in your notebook. 0.27, but now that we're big fifth graders, we're going to say 27 hundredths.
Yes. No, wouldn't it be great if they were all that easy? They're not. Okay, so another way that you could do it is simplify it. So you wrote read it, then you have your little examples. Now you're going to write simplify it. So if we have a big one, 15/20ths, well, looking at that, I know 15 and 20 both have 5 as a factor. So if I divide 15 and 20 by 5, 15 divided by 5 is 3. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So I get 3/4. Now, okay, 3/4. That's one of those really easy decimals that you should just know by now. I mean, you could work it out by doing the division like we've practiced before, but you should just know 3/4 is the same thing as 75 hundredths. 3/4 of a dollar, 75 cents. So this one you're simplifying and then using that to just use a decimal that you already know. So another example, 2/10. So again, okay, what goes into 2 and 10? Well, 2. So if I divide 2 by 2, I get 1, and 10 by 2, I get 5. So 1/5. So again, I'm thinking, what do I add 5 times to get to 100 there? What is 1/5 of 100 is sort of how I think about it. A fifth of a dollar would be, right, 20. So 20 are 2/10 is that's how I always thought about it. I don't know. Hopefully that's not a total mess for you. And now this one you try. So start by simplifying 4/8. So figure out the common factor, simplify it down, and then use that to figure out what common decimal you would get.
And this is a really friendly decimal.
That is a very nice, easy one. Okay, so hopefully you realize 4 was a factor of both, so you would divide both by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 1/2, you better know, is 5/10. So those are 2 easy ways, and again, it's not always going to be that simple. So now's what to do if you don't have one that you can solve in one of those 2 ways.
Okay. So the third way that you can start with a fraction and turn it into a decimal is by dividing. And yes, we have done this before. So when all the other methods fail, you got to do some dividing. So looking here, we have 5/6. And this one is one of those fractions where you're just like, I don't know this just right off the bat. So let's divide it. So 5 divided by 6. You should be really good at this now where you add your decimals and your zeros. And now you're just going through the steps of long division. 6 can go into 50 8 times. 6 times 8 is 48. I subtract that. I get 2. I bring down my 0. 6 can go into 20. 3 times 6 is 18. I can subtract again. Ooh, I'm starting to see a pattern. I bring down my 0 again, and I get 20 again. And so I can put my repeating line because this would just happen over and over and over again. Of course, 2, you remember from dividing with decimals that you are going to bring your decimal straight up there, and you should get an answer like, whoops, sorry, don't see that yet, 83 hundredths then.
Yep.
Oh,
No.
and so now you are
Ah.
going to try one on your own now that you've seen a great example.
Oh boy.
So here we go. 4/9.
I don't even know if we give them the answer to this one.
Oh, goodness. Oh, nope, we don't. So
So
good
come
luck.
with that ready. Come with
Be
that one
ready
ready,
for
guys.
that one.
Okay, now we are going to flip-flop. So instead of going from a fraction to a decimal, we're going to go from a decimal into a fraction. And we can follow some of the same steps. So the first thing you do is write the decimal over 100 if it has a number in the hundredths place, or over the 10 if it has a number in the tenths place. So again, you're thinking about reading it, and then you simplify. So in this one, the 3 is in the tenths place. Or I would say this, if I was reading it, 3/10. That's how a fifth grader would read it. So as a fraction, you just write 3/10. Okay, so again, you're reading it, and the little trick is, again, if the 3 is in the tenths place, so it goes over a 10 in
Just
your
knowing
fraction.
that place value again.
Right. This one, 75 hundredths, if I was reading that, the 75 ends in the hundredths place, so I would write it over 100. Now, this time, that's a lot bigger. So this is where we need to go into step number 2, simplifying. So what can go into 75 and 100? And if you're thinking money, you're thinking 25, right? Quarters. So 3/4 make 75, 4/4 make 100. So that is where the 3/4 comes in. Okay, now one more for us to try before you get to do one on your own. This one, you could say 2/10, or you could say 20 hundredths, however you want to say it. This one, I just made it even harder so you can see what to do there. 20 hundredths, again, what goes into both of those? Well, I know 20 goes into both of those. So 20 goes into 20 once, and 20 goes into 100 5 times. So I've simplified it down to 1/5. So that is how to go in the other direction. Now, I think you get to try these two on your own.
Yes.
So you will be looking for the one where you divided before, and then these ones as well. So you are taking those two numbers, and I'm not going to say them because I don't want to give it away, but you're going to take those two numbers and write them as a fraction. So good luck, and we will see those tomorrow.